Let's bring in two experts for their thoughts on how teams should be preparing for the World Cup. Don't expect you to have all the answers, chaps. Dr. Ralph Rogers used to work for Chelsea Football Club and is medical director of the London Sports Injury Clinic. Rasmus Ankersen is an expert on high performance in sports and author of best-selling book, The Goldmine Effect. Dr. Ralph, let's start with you, because people always look at the injury stories before big tournaments like the World Cup to start with. When you've got a big sports event like that looming, does the medical approach to injuries with players change at all?
Actually doesn't really change. I mean,
because it shouldn't do, should it?
It shouldn't, no, not at all. But what does change in a tournament play, it's not like playing week to week in Champions and our leagues here. What changes is like the management of time. And I can remember when I was working with the FA development squad, something that Brian Eastick and Noel Blake used to talk about a great deal to the young players, up-and-coming players going into the senior squad, is how are you going to manage your time? Here you have fit young men, healthy young men, and you have to manage their time. You know, they have to manage their time. That's just the whole idea, is to learn how to manage your time to get prepared to play.
Because Rasmus, presumably with these particularly young athletes sometimes, there must be a frustration factor. Their whole preparation, growing up and wanting to be a sports star, has been geared to these big tournaments, these moments for glory, and yet suddenly they've got something going wrong with their bodies that's holding them back.
Yeah, no, that can be a massive source of frustration. But I think it's also interesting from a psychological perspective, because a World Championship is a very different competition than a full league season. There's a lot more pressure because you have fewer games. So one mistake can have big consequences. You don't have 30 games to make up for those mistakes. So in addition to the pressure you may feel from an injury, there's a psychological pressure that you need to perform. And that can affect players and teams in a way where they will start being more cautious and maybe careful, which is not good, because you gotta dare to lose in order to win.
And particularly with the three players we mentioned, that we've seen headlines about them for weeks in this country as much as anything. Even though Suarez only plays it, the World Cup is that big, isn't it? You know, you've got Suarez, you've got Costa, you've got Falcao. They're desperate to play for their countries. Is there almost a placebo effect at play here, that they're almost willing their hamstrings to mend quicker than they would? That's not going to work for them, is it?
Well, it's really interesting, because at this level, obviously your mind has a great deal to do. Even it has a great deal to do with the way you heal. So as long as you stay positive, there is going to be some chance for people like Suarez to come back. That's for sure. I don't think he'll come back to the first match, but I think he'll surely be back afterwards. The hamstring injury is a tricky one. Hamstrings tend to feel much better before they're completely healed. And I thought what Graham Souness said the other night when Costa came on, I thought that was a really interesting point, because he said, I'm going to worry about that hamstring, and sure enough, it went. So again, there's almost like an iceberg effect, where you really start to feel much better before the injury is completely healed. So I worry about that hamstring. The ACL injury, I'm not really sure about it. You know, we're talking about 5 months. I'm not sure if he's going to come back from that. He will want to come back desperately. Yeah. But I think that'll be a tough call.
Need some divine intervention for that one. Listen, we've only scratched the surface so far. Our experts are going to stay with us. More from them in a moment. And we're also going to show you why LeBron v. Lance was the focus as the Pacers kept their playoff hopes alive. LeBron James.
Discover Azerbaijan from A to Z.
And it goes a little something like this. South.
Hi, we're back with more from Dr. Ralph Rogers and Rasmus Ankersen on the best way to prepare physically and mentally for a major sporting event. The World Cup starts just 2 weeks today. Rasmus, we were speaking during the break there about there never seems to be a best way. Take England, for example, because here we are broadcasting from London. They had a boot camp under Fabio Capello in 2010 and got criticised for it. Now Roy Hodgson's under pressure because he's letting the players have a bit more time off. Is there a right way?
I don't think there's a recipe. I mean, in my home country, Denmark, we won the European Championship in '92, and at that time, all the players were at the beach having a nice holiday, and then Yugoslavia got banned, and we came into the tournament and ended up winning. So maybe the recipe is to go to the beach first. I don't know. I just think
I tried that one with CNN before going to Brazil. I'm not going to have any of it.
Okay, yeah. No, I mean, I think we got to be careful by judging the quality of the preparation solely on the outcome, because it's so complex. I mean, and it's very, very, very few games. There's a lot of randomness as well. So you can still be very well prepared and lose, and you can have great preparations, and the result might not go your way. I mean, that's just the way. So I don't think there's a recipe.
Because if we're getting technical, Dr. Ralph, I was interested reading something somewhere the other day where they said you can give the players a few days off, but after 4 days, sort of muscle tone and aerobic fitness can start to degrade. Is that true?
Well, no, not really. Not in these top athletes. I mean, you're looking anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks or something like that. You know, there's been research on that.
So they can take a week off and it wouldn't be a huge issue.
And you know what? Sometimes there's an active rest that you need to take. The body does need a chance to heal itself and to rest. You need active rest in order to push on.
Because how grueling is that 9-month club season for these footballers?
It's amazing, especially in our league here, that, you know, these guys, you know, it's week in and week out. It's emotionally stressful because, I mean, look at this year's been like one of the greatest years, you know, towards the end. So a lot of these guys are also, as Rasmus talked about, mentally tired. So they need a break.
Yeah, and Rasmus, I know you've been a head coach as well of a football academy too. Was that always in your mind as to how to balance getting your top players in for the big games and when to know to leave them out?
I think from a psychological perspective, it's important always for a coach to try and reduce the distractions. So if I was a coach for one of the teams playing in Brazil, I would definitely spend a lot of one-to-one time with my players and ask them, well, what are your 3 main distractions here, and just face them head on and see if we can get rid of them, so you can focus on what is this about. And I think there's a lot of work you can do there that can have an effect.
Would you both agree there has to be a holistic approach? The coach is masterminding each team's campaign, has to think of both the body and the mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. It's not, you cannot look at one factor. It's a lot more complex than that.
Okay. Well, I'd love to then say, well, out of all those countries, pick the ones that have done that right. But it's a bit early to say that. Maybe we'll get you back and ask you that another time. Rasmus Ankersen and Dr. Ralph Rogers, thank you so much for your time here on CNN World Sport. Now, the Indiana Pacers